Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest in the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Ronell Castro on the line, and he's co-founder of Swagger. Ronell, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate you having me on here and allowing me to tell our story.
Ronell, well, I'm excited to have you on the show. I've been getting ready for this one all week, and I was talking to some buddies, and I'm like, I think I'm the perfect avatar for Swagger. So you're helping people me who are, who let's just say they like games, they like to play sports predictive games, but maybe they're not always expert level. I'll pick on myself and say, so I know Swagger is helping individuals with that, and we'll dive into that today's topic and how exactly you're doing that. But we'll start this episode, Ronell, the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Ronell, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Ronell, what mission matters to you?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking, because when we started the company, we wanted to make sure that we started from the place of mission. And so what we decided our mission was going to be was to create Swagger as a way to empower sports fans to play fantasy sports with confidence in their ability to win, basically. So that's the mission that we encounter every day, how we're going to empower sports fans to feel like they can actually go in, play, have some fun, and win real money.
It's awesome. Great to have you on. And I guess just to get us kicked off here, I mean, where did all this begin with you? Like, how did you get started in business and as an entrepreneur?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you how I got started sort of in sports. I mean, I'll kind of go a little back. When I was, I grew up a huge sports fan. I'm from Miami, so all the Miami teams, Dolphins, all that stuff. Yeah. I'm also 6'5". I think I was 6'5" by the time I was like in ninth grade. So I played basketball in high school, obviously. They weren't going to let me walk through the hallways without recruiting me. And so, you know, man, like sports was just my life. Like it just revolved around it. And so very early on, I ended up doing pretty well in school. Like academically, I got scholarships to go to New York University. And when I got there, I sat down with my advisor and she asked me, you know, like, hey, any ideas, majors? What do you think you want to do? Yeah. And I just looked at her and I said, you know, if I can work in sports, I'd be happy. I don't know, journalism, like whatever. And then she said, well, we have this new program. It's called sports management. It combines a business degree with a concentration in sports. What do you think? And I was like, you had me at sports management. Let's go. Right. So I did that in college. They emphasize networking a lot. So I networked, and I was in New York, which is perfect, right? The epicenter. Yeah. So I networked a lot, like from freshman year on. And that's how I kind of have gotten a lot of my opportunities, really has been that way. So kind of second job out of college, I immediately started in the industry, but the second job out of college was at a company called SME Branding, which was one of the top sports branding agencies in the country at the time. They did a lot of the logos you see nowadays in college teams, especially, and they work with pros too. But like the Gator head, when you see like the Gator head on Gator stuff, like they designed that, you know, Penn State, Harvard, a bunch of different schools and colleges. So I got lucky enough to start there. I was in my mid-20s, and that gave me my real kind of branding background. I realized I really love this thing called the brand, building a brand, what it means to people, having it have meaning. It was a small agency, and so I worked directly for the owners, and that's when I got my first taste in entrepreneurship, because even though I didn't own the company, they wanted you to act like you owned the company. And I took on a lot of responsibility. I worked all the time, but I really got a taste for what it's like to really like own your stuff and like everything from the success to the failures, right? Terrific experience. The only reason I ended up leaving there really was because I married young, and my wife and I were both from Miami, and we felt like it was time to kind of come back home and start a family soon and get into those conversations. So I ended up going to Miami, worked at a couple other agencies, but eventually found my way to a place called expressbet.com, which is very relevant to this. It's a sports betting site. At the time, it was sports betting only on horse racing because it was the only legal form of betting. So the president at ExpressBet was a gentleman named Ron Luneski, who, spoiler alert, he's my partner now. And so Ron he is an interesting guy with a ton of experience in this space. He started back in the late 90s in a company called ubet.com. They were really the first sports betting site, again, horse racing only. but they were a little bit like Uber. You know how Uber launches and the laws are kind of gray area?
Yeah.
And they're like, we're just going to launch and they're just going to have to like roll with us. Event was a little bit like that, right? So, they're operating in this sort of like, hey, we know that this form of gambling is legal because you can go to an OTB and place a bet over the phone. So why can't you do it online? Yeah. I mentioned that because Ron and his team really were the ones who worked in a lot of different states to get the words and digital put into laws that allowed for online gambling to happen, which many years later.
This was way back in the 90s. Yeah.
Yeah. Many years later, now you've got gambling what it is today, right? So Ron took that company public. Then he was hired to start a ExpressBet, which he started at zero, built it to a over $100 million business. When I came in, it kind of grew organically, and he really wanted to build out the marketing function in a more, sophisticated way. And so we developed a team. During that time, we were able to grow the company about 3x. Wow. And that's really where I got my digital marketing chops, my product marketing chops. It was a website. It was an app. How do people come in? How do you get them to sign up, deposit, like that whole, user flow that leads to real business results? That's where I really got my education on that. So it was terrific experience, obviously. And it kind of builds. I always say your career is like a layered cake. Like you're just kind of building layers into it of tools and things that are going to make you better.
Yeah, in this space, I mean, to me, it feels to me like there's just so much opportunity, and specifically in sports, betting, fantasy, like all these different areas. And it's just like you could say the word, marketing, right? There's how many niches in marketing. Same thing with this, right? So I want you to speak right now, maybe to the entrepreneurs out there, or the individuals that maybe have an interest in this space but don't really know where to start. Like if you could go back and maybe give yourself, as you're kind of going through this, journey, some advice and some tips, what would you say about getting into this space?
Into entrepreneurship or into the gaming space?
Into entrepreneurship, but specifically in the sports space, like you're in.
I mean, I think my advice is kind of general, because what I found with myself is that for a long time, I thought if I could have done it earlier, I would. Now, I say that with the caveat that I think everything happens for a reason and at its pace. I think now I'm more confident in myself and my career ever to do something like this, and it's really hard to do. Yeah. But early on, I had some ideas of things I wanted to do, but I was a little afraid to take the plunge because I thought about risk and I had a good job and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. So I think part of it is sort of not being afraid to fail, which is kind of cliche, but 100% true, and completely leaning into it, right? Once you take the plunge, just lean into whatever it is that you're doing. Just as an example, when I started this, I was getting a lot of advice. Some of it was saying, hey, you may still want to sort of, keep looking for a job in case this doesn't work out. And there came a point where I said, listen, man, I got investors. I've got a product. I'm either all in or I'm not. Yeah. So at this point, I'm all in and we're going to go for this, right? No matter how the day looks. And that's my advice, man. Just it's scary, but you'll find that once you get into it, you've been doing it for 2 or 3 months. There is no on and off switch. You just 2 or 3 months later, you realize you're running a company, and it's just like every day's problems and successes. And it becomes normal. What used to be not normal is now normal.
Oh, I love the guests I bring on this show. Now I'll tell you right now, because every time I ask a question similar to that, like I feel like anybody that watches this show is like, yeah, I don't want to be an entrepreneur. All I hear is that it's hard, it's tough, and every day something's gonna happen.
I'll tell you what, though.
It's the truth, though. But everything, I love that you said that, by the way, because I feel like so many like individuals maybe or platforms, whatever, sugarcoat it, right? Like, oh, it's the dream and do this and that. And I'm like, yeah, my experience as an entrepreneur from anybody I've interviewed hasn't been that it's a smooth ride, right?
No, it's not at all. But I'll tell you, in my case, what I always said I wanted to have to start a company to feel good starting a company was 2 things. One was a product that I really believed in, because I'm a terrible salesperson. I can't lie to you, right? Like if I don't believe in something, I can't sell it. So something I really believe in, and I have that here with Swagger. And then ideally a good partner that I trust, who's complementary in skill set, kind of same moral fiber, so to speak, or sort of come from the same place. We approach it the same way. We care about employees. We want to build a good, honest company. We want to build a good, profitable product and users. So like, I have that in Ron. So to be fair, those things didn't come together for me until I went through the career that I went through, and until now. And so like, that's part of why I feel so confident doing it. But even in the first few days, man, I was scared, and I didn't, I was like, is this what's going to happen?
That's one of the things that I do like about your background, your journey, is that you allowed yourself to go through that apprenticeship phase, right? Or that regimen, or you allowed yourself to become an expert, and you even went to school for this niche, we'll say. So, I mean, you really laid a lot of groundwork. You didn't just one day wake up and say, I got this idea for an app, and then quit everything. And like, you know what I mean? Which, by the way, some people do that and it works out for them. It's definitely not an easy thing to pull off, but I'm just saying in general, like, you went through a good apprenticeship phase. So you actually understood your niche, what you were doing, and built your skill set, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it took, I've been working for 2 decades, so it took a while. And sorry, in the same vein of advice, I would also say that if you're not an entrepreneur yet, but you've always had the kind of seed in your brain and planted, and you just don't believe that you could do it, don't be so hard on yourself. I was for a long time. And I thought that meant, I used to read about the Mark Zuckerbergs. Oh man, he did it right out of college. He went right into it. He even quit college. And I was just like, why am I like, 28, 29, and I feel like I still need more experience? You know what? Everyone's got their own journey, man. And so this one was mine. I took what I took. I learned what I learned. I built the right relationships. I was able to leverage one of those into this situation. I wouldn't have been able to do it 10 years ago, just to be fair. So, it's like, don't be so hard on yourself, but, know what it is that you want. Like in my case, I said, great product, great partner. And when it comes around, put yourself in a position to be there and recognize it, and then take the plunge if you can.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great advice there. So let's switch it up a bit. So I want to go further into Swagger. So you mentioned some things, but let's go deeper. First off, tell us exactly what you do at Swagger.
What I do, or what Swagger is?
Swagger, what Swagger is.
Yeah, so Swagger is a daily fantasy site. We are, so, I say that and people are going to think DraftKings FanDuel. So we're not DraftKings FanDuel. So there's the way daily fantasy kind of evolved is you have a couple different, ways to play. One is your traditional daily fantasy, DraftKings FanDuel. You go in, you draft the team. Really, there's 3 ways, because there's the season long that's kind of similar. You go in, you draft the team, you play for a full season. DraftKings FanDuel took that model and they made it into a single day or a week, kind of like a shorter time frame. But you're still drafting a team, managing a salary cap, trading players. It's like a GM, like a fake GM. It's a lot of fun to be a fake GM. And then the other things, the other way that it evolved in the last couple of years are sites like ours, where you have more of your straight, like, it's player props, and props are player performances within the game. So you're kind of making predictions on how many touchdowns Brady's going to throw, right? You're not predicting whether the Buccaneers are going to win. You're kind of playing the player's performance. And it's more kind of one-off. You play it whenever. You're not playing against other players. It's, it's just, you're going in, you're making predictions on player performances, 2 or more at a time, combining them together, and that's how you play, right? So that's the kind of site that we're at. The way we're really different is we really wanted to address a couple of pain points that are pretty common. And that's one is, whether you're talking about the traditional daily fantasy sites, or you're talking about like a sports book, the whole thing is very intimidating. You go in, interfaces have a lot of information, data, you've got colors, you've got, if it's daily fantasy, you've got all these contests, and you're like, man, where do I start? And what's for me, right? And so within that too, it's, odds, like people don't understand odds. I, for one, kind of, you told me what a -150 odds are on something. I understand it, but I'm not going to bet $100. So like, if I bet 20, what is this? And I got to do math. And it's like, I could do it if it's one pick, but if I'm doing like a parlay, which is multiples, it's like, how are they figuring odds on that? Like, am I getting a good deal? Am I getting taken? The house always wins, right? Or, what's going on? So like, you got all of that intimidation factor. And then when you give it a shot, like I did when I used to play, and you lose, you quickly lose your confidence. And you're like, I can't win this, right? So that's one pain point. The other one was the winning factor, right? And so like, I'll share a stat with you. 90% of prizes that are actually paid out, cash prizes, are won by 2% of players. Right?
Wow.
That's it. And the other 10%, it's something like 98% is by 15% of players. So like, let's just say 15% of people who play know what they're doing. Probably only 2% know, and the rest are getting lucky to some degree, some levels of luck. Everybody else, you, me, we're part of the 85%.
Wow.
Right. And
so these are the sharks, right? These are the sharks.
Yeah, these are the sharks, right? And so the way these guys operate, I'll tell you, it's a lot of these guys are like, they came from Wall Street, or they were like analysts or math guys. They start with their own models. I actually knew a guy like this. I saw it once. He showed me his Excel sheet.
Yeah.
He played fantasy baseball. He used to have all these things that he considered factors for winning, right? Like the weather, player injury, whatever. He's got all these different data points and a model that he developed over years of playing. And based on that is how he did his lineup, right?
Yeah.
And then there are the guys who develop the algorithms. They're the guys who either do an algorithm themselves, or they go out and they hire someone and they develop an algorithm so that they can then take this model and play in as many games as possible all at once. Meanwhile, there's me. I'm just trying to put together my team. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm thinking like, oh, shoot, I watch games every weekend. I'm going to kill it, right? No chance, right? So you've got odds that are confusing, tons of data, difficult user interfaces, impossible to win. And we're like, can we address this? And so we developed a game that the first thing we did was we said, okay, player props, super easy, puts us into the daily fantasy space. We can be in more places. Each prop has a certain number of outcomes, and those outcomes have a score, certain number of points associated with that outcome. An outcome, I mean, how many touchdowns is Tom Brady going to throw? And then there's a high, a middle, and a low option, right? 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 3, just to keep it simple. Each one has a score. Now, there's other games that will give you a score, but what they'll do is they'll give you a standard. Like they'll say, if you hit this pick, you're going to get 100 points. Yeah. We don't do that. Each one has a different score because that score reflects the probability. It's kind of like odds. So when you start looking at it as a player, you know intuitively that 3 touchdowns is really hard to do, which is worth 75 points.
Yeah.
1 touchdown is simple, but he usually throws for 2. So maybe that's worth 70. And the middle one is worth 65. That's usually where he lands. And so now you can make a decision to say, okay, who is he playing? Oh, that defense sucks. I think he's going to go for 3 touchdowns. You know what? I'm going to go for more points so I can score more. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first kind of way that the game is intuitive. The second way is why the score? And what we do with that is we create what we call a prize board, which is associated with your ticket, right? So every ticket has a slightly different one. So if my ticket has 4 selections and I put a $10 into the ticket, I got a prize board. Yeah. And that has scores, multiple scores with multiple cash payouts. So what happens is my 4-pick ticket, if I hit all my picks, I'm really good. And I score all the points associated, let's just say it's 300. Maybe I'm winning whatever out of a $10 ticket. Maybe I'm winning $1,000. Really nice payout. But how many times am I going to hit 100% of the time? Like rarely, right? I've never even done it, right? So that's my first problem. I've never done that. So I always lose, right? Not here. Because if I hit 2 out of those 4 and it scores me 140 points, now I look at the prize board, I go, oh, 140 points means a $45 payout. Okay, I just won $45. Is $45 changing my life? No. But you know what it is doing? It makes me feel good. I hit 2 out of 4. Maybe next time I'll hit 3 out of 4, whatever. And now I got
it's also keeping you coming back too. So you're not like in this mode where, I just, flushed my money down the toilet again. I didn't hit them all, right?
I always say players who don't win don't stick. And so I'm trying to create a sticky, more sticky game. And so now you've got a chance that you can win some of that money back, right? Or more than you put in, a little bit more, and you can just keep rolling it and keep having fun. You can extend your bankroll. So those are the 2 key ways that we address those pain points. When I first saw the game and I started playing with it myself, I realized that how it worked like pretty quickly. I was like, man, this is awesome. This is what I've been wanting to play for a long time. And I just didn't know that it was out there. It's like Ron brought it to me and showed it to me. He's like, look at what I've been working on. What do you think? And so, that's how we started.
Wow. How did the idea for this come up? Like you mentioned, Ron was kind of working. Like, do you know any of the backstory on that? Like how this idea came up? The reason I asked this question, I'll tell you why, is because what you just explained to me seems so obvious that I'm wondering why other platforms aren't making sure that, more players win and spreading out kind of what that looks like so that,
Right.
the user's more sticky. But so any backstory on how that idea was developed?
Right. So one of the businesses that Ron developed, where he was at ExpressBet, was an international business where he basically took, or ExpressBet, ExpressBet took all the video and data and all the information you need to bet on horse racing, and they sold it B2B to casinos and sports books overseas in Europe. So like if you're a European sports book who over there, like gambling's been legal forever, like they're like in their version of the NASDAQ or their version of, New York Stock Exchange, like among the top 10 companies, a couple of them are gambling companies, right? So, if they wanted to offer horse racing to their users along with soccer and everything else they offer, well, they can go to ExpressBet and we can give it to them in a box. Like within 5 days, they could be up and running. As part of that, he made a connection with another gentleman out there who was running a sports book for a company called BetSun. His name was Steve. And Steve was the one who had the idea for the game. And so around 2018, right around the time I left ExpressBet, Ron, sometime after that, kind of, left as well. And Steve left his job. And the two of them were, sometime after that, they kind of got in touch and they were talking about this. It was Steve's idea. He was developing it and he wanted to bring it to the US market. And so that's how Ron got involved with the game itself. And then kind of brought me in. At the time, he didn't have a brand or anything. It was just like, an engine, a platform. So he was kind of bringing me in as a way to, make that more consumer friendly.
Walk me through kind of like the user journey. So I'm brand new. I let like take me as an example. So I'm brand new. I'm saying, okay, I watched this interview on Mission Matters. I see Ronell. I'm like, okay, he kind of described me, right? Like I just go in there and I, every once in a while play something and don't necessarily win. I'm definitely in that other end, not the 2%. What does my experience look like? Just walk me through that.
Yeah. So, you hit the website, read about us, you decide you want to sign up, you click the sign up button. First thing that you're going to have to do as part of registration, and this is part of us being a legal form of doing this, is we're going to need to verify your identity because we're not available in all 50 states. We're available in about 25 states plus DC. I always say 26 because I just call DC a state, but 25 states plus DC. They're all on the website in Canada, right? So we're going to need to verify that you're older than, 21 or older and you live in one of these states. So we go through a basic identity verification. It sounds intimidating. It's not. We just ask for your name, address, date of birth, phone number, and all that checks out. You're good, right? You enter the site, real simple user interface. Ours uses Jersey. So like the first thing you'll see is we've got two kind of games within it. You'll see the main game, which is called Action X, and you'll see all these different sports, right? Let's say it's the NFL. You'll see all the different games on Sunday, two jerseys, Dolphins versus Bills. I really love the jersey idea because as a fan, you collect jerseys, right? So it kind of speaks to being a sports fan. So I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm definitely going to play that game. You go in, you click the game. You decide that you want to start making some selections. You make your picks. You got to pick a minimum of 4. It could be anywhere from 4 to 10. Before you submit the ticket, you're going to be asked to deposit. So you're going to have to deposit some money up front. Once you do that, you make your deposit, you can play your ticket, you hit submit, and you're good. And then after that, once the games end, you got 4 picks in your ticket. So if they all came from the same game, once that game ends, your ticket is resolved, or if it's multiple games that you had in there, once the final game ends, your ticket resolves. You'll see the winnings in your account. You can play them again. You can ask for a withdrawal, whatever. I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, that's basic to pretty much any of the sites. It's that kind of, you deposit first, you play, and then play again or withdraw.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's pretty simple, and I'm curious, like, what kind of, so obviously you had the thesis, right? Create something that's very user friendly, that widens the market for people that aren't professionals. Is this still a good place for the pros to come? I'm just curious on that end. I know they're the 15%, let's say, but is this still a good platform for them?
Absolutely, because when I say things like a parlay, which is the combination of bets, that's actually becoming a much more, it's one of the fastest growing segments of gaming, right? It's becoming a way that here in the US we like to play a lot. It's just more interesting. And so I have several, both customers, players of ours, as well as, before I even got into this, friends of mine that were big gamblers who used to do it all the time. They love to play parlays. When I showed them the game, the one thing they would always say is, "Oh, this is dope. That means my last leg won't kill my ticket."
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, exactly. Right. Like that feeling of like, you've got the perfect ticket until that last leg. And that's what kind of ruined your chances. And they're like, oh, so I can still walk away with something, even if I didn't like hit, every single one of my picks. So that part of it, they really do enjoy. Yeah. I would say that's probably the biggest thing. So, yeah, I mean, I think, we really built this for the common man or the common fan like you and me, the common player. But I really do think there's a place here for the core guy who really just likes to have a little bit of action and wants to be able to do it with, again, the same feeling of less risky, because it's not an all-in proposition.
Yeah, I get it. And in terms of, I guess, just the mechanics of this, like, so the key here is that you're just putting more money back into the pockets of the gambler, of the individuals that are playing, I should say, right?
Right.
Like, that's one of the keys. So then that's what's going to give them that feeling, because like you mentioned, your friends. So you walk away with nothing. At least this way, you walk away with something. Like, that's the key, and that's what's going to keep you playing, and that's what's going to keep you interested. That plus the ease of use for the novice gambler as well. In your point system. I mean, if you combine all of these things, I mean, what's been your feedback so far? Like, what kind of feedback have you gotten so far?
I mean, so far, all positive. People immediately understand the point system.
It's intuitive.
Yeah, it's intuitive. They understand that you can win without the perfect ticket. So overall, the feedback's good. To be honest, the only time we get negative feedback is when you get the guy who says, "Oh, I want to bet on the Chiefs." And I tell him, well, it's not betting, and it's daily fantasy, and we don't offer end of game because we're not a sports book. So sorry, but really, like, I mean, that's part of the reason why I jumped in is we did a lot of market testing beforehand, and overwhelmingly the feedback we got back was it is cool. It is intuitive. We do need something where, we don't have to be in an all-in situation. And I haven't exactly seen anything like it, so.
It's awesome. It's great. And I'm excited to continue to watch this story unfold. I just have to ask, Ronell, what's next? I mean, what's next for Swagger?
Yeah. So the NFL season is upon us.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
God. It's been, I'll tell you, man, as soon as the Super Bowl is done, I'm one of those people who counts the days. Love football. So football season is upon us. We're ramping up big time at Swagger for it. We're going to have pretty much, you can have props on every single game that's available once the regular season starts. And we're actually increasing the number of props that we offer. So props are those specific, like Tom Brady, markets, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, whatever. So for each NFL game, we're going to have over 100 props available that you can play. So that's a lot of options. And why do we have that many options? Because we're true sports fans. So I always use this example, like, if you go to a lot of other sites similar to ours, they'll show you the top quarterback and the top running back and the top wide receiver, sure. But on our site, we'll show you the third string running back who is the receiving back for the team and gets a lot of yards from scrimmage. That may not be rushing, it may be receiving. Like that guy, you can make a prediction on that guy, even though he's not the starter, but he's an important player. So we take all those things into account and we create markets around it. So we're going to have over 100 props per game.
Wow.
We're launching something new, which is leaderboards. So if you're paying for points, what better thing to do than to take your points, see it on a leaderboard, and see how you compare to the other players in the community. And attached to that are going to be over $7,000 in prizes. So we're going to have, this is in addition to you playing and just winning cash. This is like, if you do well on the leaderboard, you can win extra stuff. So we'll have monthly leaderboards, and we're going to have a really cool one, a full season NFL leaderboard starting from the first day through the Super Bowl.
Whoa.
You'll be able to, your points will accumulate through the season. Like your top 10 highest scores will make your score. So it doesn't matter when you jump in, at any point you can compete. And then at the end of the season, whoever's number one is going to get a few things. Number one, we're going to recognize them as the Swagger Fantasy Football Champion. Like they're the top.
Come
NFL
on, man. There's people watching this like,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
So they're going to get a trophy from Trophy Smack that we're going to get custom made for them. And they're going to get a Pro Football Hall of Fame experience for 2. We're going to give them tickets to the ceremony, the preseason game, and the museum, $1,000 in their account that they can use for travel. So it's going to be like a really cool experiential type prize. And then if you're not that person, like the top 25 players are going to win site credits and merch and different things like that. And the monthly winner is sort of the same thing. We're going to have site credits, gift cards to like Fanatics, and they can buy sports memorabilia, different things. So that's going to be really cool. And then the last thing I'll mention, anybody who signs up, this is across the board. We put $10 in your account right away. I don't know if you hear that. You put $10 into your account right away. So you can try us out, risk-free. And then once you deposit, we'll match 100% of your deposit up to $100. So when you make your first deposit, $10, 20, 30, we'll match it. And you have a lot of house money that you can play with at that point and continue to win off of. So,
man, that's awesome. And so if somebody wants to get involved or to play, like what's the best way for them to do it?
Yeah, so go to www.playwithswagger.com. So the website is playwithswagger.com. We don't have an iOS or Android app yet. We're working on that. So right now it's a website experience. And when you go there, you can download a web app directly from the site. So it's an app experience. And then you just sign up. After that, it's pretty intuitive. So just go to www.playwithswagger.com is the site.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that players can just really go on and click on the link and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time engaging with a Mission Matters episode or listening to us, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share, why they do what they do, how they're doing it, the mission behind it, how they built their businesses, right? I mean, what can we all learn and gain from that experience? If that's the type of content that's interesting to you or sounds motivating, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. Ronell, it has been awesome having you on the show. I'm excited to watch the continued growth of Swagger and to see where you and Ron take this thing. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity and have a good day, man. Everybody else play with Swagger.